just remind the Prime Minister it's Prime Minister's questions. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, every week the Prime Minister comes with his pre-prepared lines. I think when 100,000 people have died, he should take the time to answer the question. When 1 in 3 families are saying that they don't have enough laptops or computers, his answers are simply not good enough. We're nearly a year into this pandemic. This hasn't happened in the last few weeks, and 1 in 3 families say they don't have the wherewithal to do home teaching, and those children are going without home schooling. That's the question the Prime Minister should be answering. Mr. Speaker, the UK is the first country in Europe to record 100,000 COVID deaths. We also have the deepest recession of any major economy. Our schools are closed and our borders are open. And my biggest concern is that the Prime Minister still hasn't learnt the lessons of last year. And I fear that as a result, we'll see more tragedy and more grim milestones. Now, this afternoon, I will be speaking to families who've lost loved ones to COVID. The last time I did this, I asked the Prime Minister what he would like me to say to them on his behalf. He replied with a pre-prepared childish gag. I could tell the Prime Minister just how badly that went down with those families when I spoke to them later that afternoon. So I'll ask him again, and I hope this time he'll have the decency to answer them properly. What would he like me to say to those bereaved families on his behalf this afternoon?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to the right honourable gentleman for meeting the families of the bereaved, as I have done, and I know members across the House have done throughout the pandemic, and it's important that we do that. And the message I would give those families is the same that I've given everybody I've met, is that I, of course, deeply personally regret the loss of life, the suffering of their families, Mr. Speaker. But I think the best thing that we can do to honour the memory of those who have died and to honour those who are currently grieving is to work together to bring this virus down, to keep it under control in the way that we are. And Mr. Speaker, throughout this pandemic, I'm sad to say that the Leader of the Opposition has never failed in his efforts to try to score political points when I think he could be doing just that. And he has twisted and he has turned, and 1 week he calls for tougher border measures after the Shadow Transport Secretary called for looser quarantine. He calls for schools to go back. He won't even say this morning that schools are safe. He tries to associate himself now with the vaccine programme because he senses that may be going well, Mr. Speaker. But he stood on a manifesto to unbundle the pharmaceutical companies, the big pharma, Mr. Speaker, that made those vaccines possible. And he actually attacked the vaccine task force. I know you want me to sit down, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to make this point because I tried to make it last week and you saw me. He even attacked the vaccine task force for spending £675,000 on an effort to discover whether hard-to-reach groups would take a vaccine. And I really cannot think of a better investment right now of public funds. And I hope that later on this afternoon, the right honourable gentleman may think of apologising for what he did and for that attack on the vaccine task force. Mr. Speaker, they can go on, and the right honourable gentleman can go on making his party political points. We will go on, with or without his help, in taking this country forward, fighting the pandemic and getting coronavirus down.